What if your anxiety was never about the present moment at all? What if the restless nights, the sudden rushes of tension, and the constant need to stay alert were not signs of weakness but messages from a younger version of yourself who never received the comfort you deserved? This may sound unsettling, but consider this. The nervous system you live with today may not be malfunctioning. It may simply be repeating the only pattern it ever learned. That realization changes everything because it means you are not broken. You are carrying a story that was written long before you had the words to describe it. And that story can be rewritten. Anxiety often feels like a mystery. People assume it must come from the pressures of modern life work deadlines, endless emails, financial uncertainty, or personal responsibilities. But many of you know that the pressure persists even when circumstances calm down. You lie awake at night, your chest tight, your mind racing. Yet there is no immediate crisis. Why? Because the body remembers. It remembers tension, neglect, and fear. It remembers not being soothed. This is not about blaming your past. This is about awareness. As Carl Jung once wrote, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. That pain is often quiet. It hums beneath the surface, guiding your reactions until you finally stop to listen. When we speak about the inner child, we are not using a metaphor for weakness. We are speaking of a real psychological structure, the part of your psyche that holds early experiences, unmet needs, and emotional memories that were never processed. Jung described the inner child as the gateway to wholeness, because to ignore this part of ourselves is to live with invisible wounds that keep shaping our lives. Every adult carries within them a child who remembers being small, unseen, or powerless. This child does not simply live in your mind. It lives in your nervous system, in your breathing patterns, in the way your muscles brace for impact even when there is no threat. Think about how children learn regulation. They rely on others, on parents, caregivers, teachers, to help them manage overwhelming emotions. A child cries and waits to be soothed. A child feels fear and looks for reassurance. When those responses are absent, inconsistent, or harsh, the child does not stop needing comfort. Instead, the child learns to survive without it. That survival gets stored in the nervous system, turning vigilance and tension into default settings. Even years later, the body remains on guard, always ready for danger, even in safe environments. Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." In this context, the unconscious is not only your forgotten memories, but also your nervous system's automatic responses. Until you shine light on these patterns, you may spend years chasing treatments for anxiety, without recognizing that what you are truly feeling is the echo of an inner child asking one simple question: Am I safe now? The first step toward true inner freedom is recognition. You must acknowledge the presence of the inner child, not as a shadow to be suppressed, but as a companion who has been silently steering your decisions. When anxiety strikes, it is not merely a chemical imbalance. It is a message, a coded signal from a part of you that has been waiting decades to be heard. The moment you recognize that the dynamic begins to shift, fear begins to lose its grip when you understand its origin. This is why Carl Jung emphasized self-reflection. It is not about criticism or judgment, but about observation and compassionate recognition. The second step is dialogue. Imagine speaking directly to the inner child inside you. Ask what it needs. Perhaps it craves reassurance, safety, or permission to rest. Maybe it simply wants acknowledgement that its fears were real and valid. By giving attention, even if only silently, in your own mind, you create a new neurological pathway. The body begins to learn a different pattern, one where tension is met with care rather than resistance. This is subtle work invisible to the outside world, but transformative on the inside. It teaches the nervous system that it can relax and that safety is not a fantasy, but a lived experience that can be reinforced moment by moment. Next comes the radical act of choice. Every day you make decisions that either honor this part of yourself or continue to ignore it. Choosing rest over overextension boundaries, over obligation and self-compassion over self-criticism may feel revolutionary. These acts are not indulgence, they are survival. By consistently choosing to meet your inner child with presence and care, you create a foundation of emotional resilience that no external stressor can dismantle. You begin to realize that power is not about control over others or perfection in life. It is mastery over your inner landscape. The final and most profound step is integration. Your adult self and your inner child are not separate entities to be reconciled through argument or suppression. They are threads of the same tapestry, each contributing unique wisdom. The adult can offer perspective, strategy, and protection. The inner child provides honesty, intuition, and unfiltered emotion. By listening, validating, and acting in alignment with both, you achieve wholeness. Anxiety no longer dictates your choices. It becomes a messenger that you can hear without panic. Anger, sadness, and vulnerability no longer terrify you. They become guides that deepen your understanding of yourself. Carl Jung understood that true respect from others and from life cannot be demanded through force or performance. It emerges when you no longer abandon yourself. When you meet your inner child, honor your emotions, and protect your boundaries, you cultivate a presence that commands respect naturally. People may notice, or they may not, but the point is not recognition from the outside. The point is alignment within. The liberation that follows is quiet, yet immensely powerful. It is the ultimate form of resilience, the kind that persists even when the world is unpredictable or hostile. Once you have acknowledged and integrated your inner child, the next critical step is to examine the stories you have been telling yourself, often unconsciously, for years. These narratives shape how you perceive yourself, others, and the world. They dictate which opportunities you seize, which relationships you nurture, and which experiences you avoid. Most of these stories are inherited from parents, teachers, society, and media. They are full of unspoken rules, judgments, and invisible chains. If your inner dialogue says, "I'm not enough," or "I must please to survive," you are living in someone else's script, not your own. The liberation process requires rewriting these scripts consciously, one line at a time, in alignment with truth rather than fear. Begin by identifying recurring patterns of self-sabotage or overcompensation. Notice when guilt, shame, or anxiety appear. Observe the triggers without judgment, then trace them back to the earliest memory or belief associated with them. Often the inner child is silently acting out unresolved fear or trauma, attempting to protect you in the only ways it knows. Recognizing this allows you to gently intervene and change the pattern. For example, if a lifetime of people-pleasing is rooted in fear of abandonment, you can consciously practice saying no without guilt. Every refusal is a thread in the new narrative that defines your boundaries, autonomy, and self-worth. Language is a powerful tool in this rewriting process. The words you use to describe yourself, your experiences, and your intentions must shift from criticism to clarity, from judgment to curiosity. Replace "I am weak" with "I am learning," "I am overwhelmed with," "I am processing," and "I must fix everyone" with "I can choose where to focus my energy." This is not mere positive thinking. It is a conscious reshaping of your cognitive patterns, a restructuring of the internal grammar that governs perception. Each time you speak in alignment with your inner truth, the old story loses weight and the new story gains authority. Visualization is another essential technique. Imagine the life you wish to lead as if it is already happening. See yourself setting boundaries effortlessly, speaking your truth with confidence, and resting without guilt. Envision moments where fear approaches, yet you remain grounded, compassionate, and unshakable. Visualization is not fantasy, it is rehearsal. Your nervous system begins to encode these possibilities as achievable reality, making the leap from desire to embodiment easier and more natural. Over time, these repeated mental rehearsals dissolve the emotional friction that once blocked growth. Finally, remember that transformation is iterative, not instantaneous. There will be setbacks, relapses into old behaviors, and moments of doubt. Each time this happens, it is an invitation to return to your inner child. Revisit your stories and reinforce your alignment. Power is not perfection, it is consistency in self-honoring action. By embracing this approach, you move beyond reactive living, beyond mere survival, into a space where inner freedom becomes your default state. From this foundation, the world can no longer impose the chains that once held you because the authority of your own presence has become undeniable, silent, and eternal. As you continue this journey, one of the most underrated tools for cultivating inner power is learning the art of silence. This is not mere abstention from speech, but a deliberate choice to withhold energy from unworthy conflicts, empty debates, or coercive demands. When you speak, it should be with intention, precision, and purpose. Every word carries weight. Every pause signals control. Silence is not absence, it is presence magnified. It is the space where observation and reflection converge, where your inner authority broadcasts louder than any shout could. People are drawn unsettled and sometimes intimidated by those who communicate less but influence more. Equally important is the mastery of emotional boundaries. Modern life constantly tests your tolerance, whether through social media, workplace politics, or personal relationships. Without awareness, emotional energy leaks, leaving you depleted and reactive. Begin by identifying where your emotional responsibility ends and another's begins. You cannot control the fear, anger, or judgment of others, but you can control your reaction. Recognizing this boundary transforms encounters from exhausting battles into measured exchanges where your calm becomes a shield and your discernment becomes your sword. This principle of selective engagement ensures that your influence is preserved, directed, and potent rather than diluted through overextension. Another facet of inner sovereignty is the deliberate cultivation of observation without attachment. Watch the patterns in your environment, the recurring behaviors of those around you, and the social dynamics at play. Yet do not invest your self-worth in changing or controlling them. The world will always attempt to provoke, pressure, and distract. Your power lies in remaining unmoved while staying informed. The most potent leaders, thinkers, and visionaries operate from this vantage. They see clearly, act decisively, but are rarely shaken by noise, gossip, or superficial approval. Presence more than action becomes their primary tool of influence. Integration of reflection. Rewriting your narratives and mastering silence leads to a subtle yet undeniable transformation. Your presence becomes an unspoken command. People respond to your stability, your discernment, and your refusal to overreact. They may not articulate it, but they sense that you operate from a grounded internal authority. This is the modern manifestation of psychological dominance, not through intimidation, coercion, or spectacle, but through consistent, unwavering alignment with self-truth. In this state, recognition is no longer sought, it is naturally given. Respect is not demanded. It is effortlessly felt. Finally, understand that inner freedom and external influence are intertwined. By honoring your own boundaries, emotions, and truths, you create an environment where others are compelled to adapt, reflect, and engage with authenticity. You are no longer a participant in reactive cycles. You are the axis around which perception and interaction subtly rotate. Influence is no longer an act, but a condition quietly shaping outcomes without announcements, without fanfare, without drama. It is the invisible architecture of power built from patience, self-honesty, and consistent presence. From this vantage point, life no longer happens to you. It unfolds through you, guided by the clarity, calm, and courage that only true inner freedom can create. At the summit of personal mastery, influence ceases to be a transaction and becomes an ambient force. You no longer need to assert, explain, or justify. Your actions, your presence, and your quiet consistency speak volumes. Others internalize your authority without confrontation, without debate, simply because it exists. This is the ultimate expression of power. It does not seek applause or recognition, yet it is invariably acknowledged. The echoes of your decisions ripple through social and professional networks, subtly shaping choices, guiding outcomes, and altering behaviors, often without a single explicit instruction. Here, your authority is woven into the very fabric of your environment, a force felt more than seen. History is replete with examples where the most profound influence came not from visible domination, but from invisible expectation. Consider those who transform societies, markets, and cultures without daily public performances or viral declarations. Their legacy was not constructed on accolades, but on the consistent demonstration of internal principles. They became a standard against which all others were measured, a presence that commanded attention even in absence. Modern leaders who adopt this approach understand that fear and respect, when rooted in subtlety and strategic invisibility, create durable influence, far more powerful than transient admiration or headline-grabbing actions. In practical terms, this means curating your interactions with care. Each conversation, meeting, or engagement is an opportunity to project equilibrium and discernment. Do not react to provocation. Instead, respond to opportunity. Do not seek validation. Cultivate conditions where your integrity naturally elicits acknowledgement. The combination of patience, selective speech, and measured presence establishes you as a node of influence that others instinctively defer to, even without conscious recognition. Over time, this quiet authority becomes the lens through which others interpret reality, subtly guiding thought patterns, decisions, and strategies. Moreover, this silent power is deeply liberating. By decoupling influence from visible performance, you liberate yourself from constant judgment, approval-seeking, and performative behavior. Your focus shifts from what the world thinks of you to how you align with your values, your insights, and your vision. The paradox is profound. The less you broadcast your mastery, the more undeniable it becomes. Those who truly understand this dynamic operate from a space of confidence that cannot be destabilized by external chaos. Their impact is enduring precisely because it is subtle, self-contained, and resilient. Ultimately, the journey toward inner freedom and silent authority is ongoing. It demands reflection, discernment, courage, and the patience to embrace stillness amidst motion. When mastered, it yields not only personal resilience, but also a transformative influence that shapes environments, organizations, and relationships without coercion or spectacle. In a world obsessed with noise recognition and the appearance of power, the true mastery lies in choosing what to engage with, when to speak, and how to let presence, silence, and integrity shape reality. The question remains in a society addicted to drama and constant validation. Can you embrace the discipline to let your influence speak in whispers rather than shouts?